A federal task force says it seized more than $1.4 billion in fraudulently obtained COVID-19 relief funds over the last 3 years, though it's potentially only a fraction of the total amount of aid money stolen by fraudsters. The total amount of money fraudulently taken during the pandemic could amount to hundreds of billions of dollars. In 2023, the Government Accountability Office estimated that the total amount of unemployment insurance fraud during the pandemic was between $100 billion and $135 billion, accounting for 11 to 15% of the total unemployment benefits paid during the pandemic. A 2023 Associated Press investigation estimated that up to $280 billion in pandemic relief funding was obtained fraudulently, while another $123 billion was misspent or otherwise wasted. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland established the COVID-19 Fraud Enforcement Task Force in 2021, acknowledging at the time, "It is impossible to keep all those intent on carrying out illegal COVID fraud schemes from doing so, but vowing to work to hold bad actors accountable." In its report, the COVID-19 Fraud Enforcement Task Force noted significant challenges in continuing its work. It advocated, for instance, for an extension of statute of limitations on all COVID-19 fraud-related offenses, noting, "In the coming years, investigative targets will increasingly argue that their conduct falls outside the statute of limitations." In 2022, the U.S. passed legislation increasing the statute of limitations for fraud related to the so-called Paycheck Protection Program and Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program from 5 to 10 years. Sens, Wyden, Dr. and Mike Crapo, R-Idaho, have introduced a legislative framework to extend the statute of limitations for pandemic unemployment insurance fraud to 10 years. The task force also calls for the renewal of the Pandemic Response Accountability Committee, a body of 20 federal inspectors general that oversees pandemic relief spending. Its funding is set to end next year. Later on Tuesday, Senate Democrats proposed a new $1.3 billion bill aimed at giving authorities more tools to investigate and prosecute pandemic relief fraud. The bill, which is modeled off a White House budget request, would fund new COVID-19 fraud investigative teams, provide funding to federal agencies to hire investigators that would specialize in recovering lost pandemic funds and more.